some families aren't healthy, right? You don't want, maybe you had a hard childhood. You don't want your parents were raising your kids. You don't like how your parents did it. I totally get that. So it's then again thinking outside, like, how can I create that village, right?
Anastasia Aruz, what do you do for a living?
So I am a therapist and coach that works with families to help create healthy systems. And I help moms specifically with just less overwhelm, learning boundaries, structure in their homes.
That's awesome. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I've been doing this for about 10 years, 11 years maybe.
That's
And
awesome.
it's hard, it's difficult to kind of describe how I like it or if I don't, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I've been doing it for so long. Would I like to be doing something else? Great. Yeah, sure. I'd love to go out and get a job, but at the same time, um, leaving my kids to somebody else to raise is it's a conflict for me because I don't think anybody would do it as good a job as I do. But the stress of being a stay-at-home parent is overwhelming at times, and describing that to people who don't understand, who are like, "Oh, I'd love to be home with my kids," and I'm like, "No, no, I don't think you would." So, in your experience with moms, do you have like a specialty that you, other than just helping parents kind of cope?
Yeah, I mean, I feel so my background is I was a teacher and then a school counselor, and then I had up my own private therapy practice for years. And then I was a registered play therapist. So my whole philosophy is about meeting the children where they are, giving them what they need, being present with them, um, just being especially with families, like being there for them, not just proximal, but present with your children. And so, like, for example, with you, like being home with your kids, I think is so important, regardless if it's mom or dad. Kids need us home. They need us there. They need us present, focused on them. And it's hard for families to get, a lot of families to get to a place where they're able to do that. I think, especially here in the US, we're very go, go, go. We want this, we want that. And so money is very important to our culture, which we all need money, right? But I
Absolutely.
think that sometimes we as a culture might look at that more heavily than does someone really need to be home with the kids, or can they go to a daycare, or they go to an after school program. And I think that's every family's like choice, and I don't judge anyone either way for it. But I do think that whenever I do work with families where there is someone home, I think it's great. I love it. I love when I see people really making their kids a priority.
Yeah, I think these days it's also become a problem of affordability
Yes.
for daycares and taking care of kids. I want to get into what play therapy is, but first I want to kind of hang around in that daycare situation for some folks that listen into the show. They're two income families and they can't afford to stay at home, and that becomes an issue, especially if you have more than one child, because daycare is very expensive. And where we came, where we were at in our how I became a stay at home dad was because I kind of needed a break away from my job, and I stayed at home for a little while, and my wife wanted to go back to school. My wife's earning potential was quite a bit more than mine was, but doing the things that I did for a living, I would have had been gone from like sun up till sundown. And that's very difficult to do, especially if the other parent has an office job. And so what I always tell people is like, hey, I understand that it's expensive and you have to have a two income family or a two income household. But what I suggest is staggering your work times. So if it's at all possible, mom takes the day shift, dad takes the night shift, or mom takes the night shift, dad takes the day shift. I know it's not preferable, but sometimes we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah, and when you have kids, I mean, you had the children, and so during that time when they're born till like 18, that's your prime, in my opinion, that's your primary responsibility is raising these kids, right? And so it is hard. It's hard because it is hard to afford in families for both people not to work. So yeah, I love that idea of the, because I talk about this a lot with families, the one person taking one shift. The other one is living near family if possible. If you have a healthy family structure where people can help you and getting support with whoever you can. I mean, I do think a lot of times where there's a will, there's a way. It's just you have to be really creative and just really start brainstorming of what you can do. If being home with your kids is a priority, and that isn't for everybody. Um, but I do think that it just takes a lot of creativity, like you're saying, and figuring it out.
Well, I was listening to another podcast you had done with someone, and for the life of me, I can't remember which podcast that was, but they were speaking about generational curses, and I think another big issue
Yeah.
is people are running into, especially the millennial generation, people are running into the loss of a village. And
Yeah.
I talk about that all the time on this podcast on how my wife and I, we have a village per se, but prior to like 1940, um, there was not only did you have mom and dad, but you have grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, and also the entire neighborhood. I mean, when I went outside to play, my neighbors were getting after me sometimes just as much as my parents were. And I think the loss of a village has really impacted the millennial generation, Generation Z coming up. Generation Z is it's almost terrible because they have millennials for parents or Gen Xers, and we don't have time. We don't have time to help.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're totally right. That village thing is so important. And so it's really sometimes getting outside of your comfort zone and really getting to know your kids' friends or your neighbors if you're not living near your family. And some families aren't healthy, right? You don't want, maybe you had a hard childhood. You don't want your parents were raising your kids. You don't like how your parents did it. I totally get that. So it's then again thinking outside, like, how can I create that village, right? Um, how can I create a village among the parents that I'm hanging out with? How can we build, because it's so important to have that support and have that ability for your kids to have other people besides just you. I know for us, like my mom, I'm from Florida originally, and my mom moved up to where I live. And recently, my husband and I did a trip, and I told him, I said, if my mom had not, because she watched our son for us while we were gone, and I said, honestly, if my mom had not been here, I don't think we would have done the trip. So that was like a bit, we were very lucky because we had her and she does things different than I do. I don't always like them, but she is a safe person. And so I felt really comfortable. And it was the relationship they could have together in that building. And so I was great leaving, right, for that vacation we took. But for me, family is just so important, being with him and knowing who has him or who's taking care of him to where I felt comfortable being able to do that. So if she wasn't here, I wouldn't have gone, and that would have just been a sacrifice I had made. So I think sometimes we thinking about like sacrifices we need to make during, and it's such a short period of time. I mean, 18 years, it's a chunk of time, but it's not like your whole life. And like you have these
Right.
kids for such like a small block of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It, so sometimes when we think about being parents, I think that's the ultimate sacrifice one can make, right? I mean, we have to give so much of ourselves to the cause of raising the next generation. And I don't know if a lot of people think about it that way of, hey, we're raising the next generation of people. We're raising the generation that's going to be taking care of us in our old age. I don't know if many people think of it like that, but it's true. And the amount of sacrifice that you I don't want to say have to make because that makes it seem like we don't want to make those sacrifices. But it is a sacrifice and they're huge sacrifices that we get to make.
Yeah.
And we get to hang out with our kids for 18 years. Hopefully, hopefully they don't, hopefully they want to hang out with us. That's
Yeah.
a problem I'm dealing with right now with my 15-year-old is getting him out of the room and hanging out with mom and dad without being too, well, for a lack of a better word, annoying. Not
Yeah.
that he's annoying, but sometimes, when there's a lot of chaos going around and a 15-year-old with boisterous ambitions can be a little unnerving at times.
That is true.
So what is play therapy? That's interesting 'cause as I was reading your profile, reading a little bit of information about you. I read that play therapy and then I was like, what is play therapy?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a type of therapy for kids, right? Usually it's going to be kids that are verbal, like from 3 to probably 10 or 11, it works best. You can do it with older kids, but usually 3 to that 10 or 11 age. And it's just a way to do, like, if you're going to be, like, if we go to therapy, like, and as an adult, you're going to go sit in front of a therapist. They're going to ask you questions. You're going to have this dialogue. Well, children, their language is so developmental, right? So when they're little, they're not going to have a lot of words to be able to express what's wrong, or they might not even know the words to express. But kids can always express through play. That's their words, is play. And so, as a play therapist, you're trained and it's extensive training. And so, I always tell people if you're looking for therapy for your children, really start investigating play therapy, learn where there's play therapists in your area because they have a lot of training. They are very educated on child development. They know how to work with your kids in a way that a traditional therapist is not going to know. And so, really, it's about meeting the child where they are and using that play as a way to help them through whatever it is that they're struggling through, whether it be a divorce or a death or social skills in school, whatever it could be. The play will guide them, right? Because I'm not sitting there going like, okay, so why did you punch that child? Or how did you feel when your parents got divorced? It's none of that. It's none of that. It's all through play, either with toys or drawing or games or whatever it may be. Because a lot of times when we start questioning kids, and if you have a child, you probably know this, they're going to shut down. They're going to tell you, I don't know. They're going to ignore you. They're going to make up an answer that they think you want to hear. And
That's the
so
most
through,
common one I run into is
yeah,
making up something that they think I want to hear.
yeah. And so through the play, there's really no words. It's just all through play. And so it's them, you let them lead, you let them guide you. And so through the play, they're telling you basically what to do or what to draw or whatever it is. So that's a little synopsis of what
So
it
what are
is.
some techniques that you often find is more helpful in, let's say you have a 7, 8-year-old boy. Is
Yes.
there any techniques that are more gender specific for boys versus girls?
Not at the beginning, right? Like I think from like 3 to 7 or 8, 9, usually you can do before they hit adolescence, before they hit puberty. Um, Kids are kids. I mean, I look at them, they're kids. They don't have that like I used to tell my son, there's no girl color, there's no boy color. There's just colors, right? And so if you have a dollhouse, right, you can have a pink dollhouse or you can have just like a brown wood, and there's a lot of different. So, for example, like in my office, I had dolls, I had a dollhouse, but everything was gender specific, non-gender specific. So nothing was like pink, all pink or purple. And so you can get the kid, they'll play with all of that. I will tell you, if they don't have a parent there that they think is going to judge them in regards to the play, they will play with the doll. The boys will. They'll get out the dolls. They'll get out the guns. They'll get out the knives. They'll do all of it, right? I will say the boys tend to pick the guns and the handcuffs and all that more than the girls do. But depending on what's going on in the family, um, it really just depends on the kid and what they're needing in that moment.
That's interesting that you like. I wonder, I wonder if there's a lot of parents out there who don't think about what their kids do or how their kids interact with others when they aren't around. Because
Yeah.
I often think about that with my 15-year-old. He
Hmm.
sees a counselor every now and then. I don't like to be there. I
That's
don't like
great.
to be in the same room
Yeah.
because I want him to be free to
Mhm.
express himself in whatever way he feels necessary. And if the counselor has an issue, she can come to me. She can, or whoever it may be, they can come to me later if there's an issue that they've identified that I ought to know about. But otherwise, I think it's a privacy issue, even with even with little kids.
Yep.
I don't venture to say as young as I'd say first grade. That maybe you ought to think about like would they give a different answer if I wasn't in the room, or would they respond differently to certain stimuli if I wasn't in the room? And I often think about that. I wonder how many other parents think about that.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting because they will. Kids, they love I always talk about this with parents. Like, I've worked with families for years and I worked in the public education schools for a long time. And you can have a parent that beats the crap out of their mom, right? Or their dad, or beats them physically. They're still going to love that parent. They still
Yeah.
care about everything they say. They care about their opinion. They care about all of it. And so when you're able to separate them out of a situation and really let them use their words, use their voice, where there's no judgment, there's no anything prior, right? You just have this neutral person. The child, a lot of times, if they feel safe, they'll feel that ability to speak their mind. And when I would see children, and I do still see kids, I always tell them, I don't have to tell your parents any of this unless you're going to be a harm to yourself or harmful to someone else. And so they know that I don't really share what they want to tell me if it's something that they want to be private. I will a lot of times, if there's something I feel like a parent needs to know, um, I will make sure the parent knows, right? And a lot
Right.
of times I'll get the kids on board with that. I'll be like, all right, so how would you feel your parent knew this, right? And so, because I do think that one of the important things in a family system is that everybody knows what's kind of going on and how everybody's feeling. So it's all kind of how it's done. But yes, definitely kids care so much about what their parents think. That is definitely for sure.
So, what are some common issues that you run into that, like, some common parenting issues, not necessarily on the children's side, but what do parents come to you most often with?
Yeah. Well, like just sometimes patience and not having the patience at home or not being able to know how to get their children to listen, or they're having a hard time with drop off from getting their kids out of the car to go to school. What else? Just divorce, like any type of trauma in the family, like if there's been a divorce or a death and they don't really know how to deal with that with their children, like a lot of that kind of stuff. And what I always want parents to know, none of it is anyone's fault, right? We all started a baseline. No, everyone has different experiences from before now, and so it's all just like a learning experience and we're all learning together. So I really try to meet parents where they are, and that's one of the reasons I switched kind of from therapy to coaching, because with the coaching model, um, it's more of an equality, right? I'm here just to see
Yeah.
what's happening with you and see if I have any information that's going to help you. And then you're going to share with me what you have. And then we're going to kind of put that together and see how we can help your family create more calm and less chaos and get those kids to feeling more regulated in their nervous system, get you feeling more regulated in your nervous system where you have easier days.
I find a lot, the biggest issue here in my house is consistency. And I find that consistency is actually what helps the most in situations.
Yes.
Um, uh, with all kinds of things here, rules are inconsistent. What mom wants is inconsistent. What dad wants is inconsistent. So I think we have a lot of issues with inconsistency here. And where I try to balance that out is with honesty. I parent honestly. If I'm pissed off, I tell my kids, like, I'm irritated, I'm upset, leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so occasionally I will lash out, but it's with honesty. I'm like, hey, I've had enough, you know how parents do sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
but I find with other parents, when they come to me and ask me for advice, and now I don't know why they do this because like the sign says up there, coffee with bearded bad dad. I'm not a perfect parent. I think that I may make it look easy because I'm a good parent, but the the most common thing I tell people is like, look, we're all going to fuck up our kids somehow, like
Mhm.
every one of us. And it doesn't really matter, what kind of family you come from, what kind of background you come from. We're all going to screw up our kids. We're going to overcompensate in some areas. We're going to undercompensate in some areas. We're going to say things that we don't mean. They're going to say things that they don't mean. So, in short, we're all going to screw up our kids. And I try to lead with that because a lot of parents are concerned that what if I do the wrong thing?
Mhm.
And how will my kid respond to that? And my answer to that is like, well, at least you're doing something, you know?
Yeah.
And what are you, do you try to reassure your clients that like, hey, look, everything's going to be okay at the end of the
Yeah.
day?
For sure. And I think you made a really good point about like just the repairing, right? Like you're in a bad mood, yell at them or you say something you wish you didn't say. So it's going back and doing the repair. Like, hey, I did not talk to you the way I should have. I'm really sorry about that. And letting the kids know that you make mistakes too, and that none of us are perfect, and that we're all just doing the best we can. Right. And so I think that repair is so huge with kids when they can see that you don't think of yourself as like this perfect parent or that you're just the person. And I think a lot of us were raised that way. Like, at least with my family, I was raised and that my mom was like, I never thought she made mistakes because she was like this authoritarian, like very strict parent and you didn't question, right? And I think we're raising our kids a little different now. And so being able to repair and being able to say, like, I'm really sorry, I should have done it differently. Or what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? How do you think we could have handled it differently? Is really important to kids to show them that you respect them as a human, not just as your child, but also just as another person. They're like a little person, but you still respect them and that you're just doing the best you can.
You mentioned, what do you think about that? Sometimes, like, if we're being honest, like sometimes I don't really care what my kids think, and
That
I
is true.
think that's a problem, because without, I mean, you've seen the parents do as I say, not as I do type of parents. I'm that kind of parent, except for I will explain why and or why I want things done a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes my delivery might be a little skewed, but I ultimately, honesty is really, really important for me because, like, if I'm going through a rough time and I'm trying to explain to my kids how to do something and I'm getting aggravated with them, like in the moment I will explain to them why I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, listen, I'm getting frustrated, you're getting frustrated, nothing's getting done here, so let's take a break and go away for a moment. And that usually works. But I think for me, it being honest in the moment is really important to me. If I freak out, if I'm having a panic moment or if I'm disgruntled for any reason with my kids, I liked in that moment where I'm freaking out. I like to explain to them like, look, the same things that are wrong with you are wrong with me. You have anxiety, I got anxiety too. Like with us, we've got ADHD here in the house. My boys have ADHD, so do I.
Yeah.
So I try to explain that like, look, the same shit that's wrong with you is wrong with me. I need a moment. And I think if a lot of parents were more honest with their kids, and especially with the negative sides of life, if mom and dad encounter a problem, I think sometimes it's important for kids to see that because I've got a 21-year-old son who he moved out on his own when he was 19. I think he was 19. No, he's 20. Shortly after his 20th birthday, he moved out on his own. And he thought that everything was going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And I said, well, look, you got bills to pay. You got to do this. You got to do that. And he was thinking he was going to be able to go on vacation with his friends and, do all these fun things. I'm like, no, you got rent to pay now, you know?
Yeah.
And in talking with him, I think that it was a hindrance to him not to see some of the struggles that we went through.
Right.
especially financially. I know a lot of parents are like, we don't need to share our finances with our kids. Nobody's saying share your finances with your kids, but don't hide from them your problems just because they're adult problems. You know, um, and I'm not saying them make them kids' problems either. What I'm saying is like diversity builds strength,
Mm-hmm.
or not diversity, but well, I, I had that word right there on the tip of my tongue, but adversity. That's what it is. Adversity. Adversity builds strength and character. And I think that when kids can see parents struggling in the moment with not only just like finances or like work or something, maybe we have those little powwows and talk it out with our kids, and so that they can understand and they can see like, hey, we're human too, we have issues, and coming here and talking out with you, I can work through my issues. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important to have that relationship with your kids.
Yeah, and I think developmental, they have to be at a certain age. I mean, I think always being honest with them and how you're talking about it depends on their age, right? Like, so you're going to share
Yes,
more
yes.
as they get older than when they're little. The other really important thing about that honesty that I like that you said is that if you're being, kids can read energy. They read energy before anything when they're with us. They feel our energy. They can tell when you're stressed out. They can tell when mom and dad are having their issues. They can tell whenever things are wrong. And so by you acting like everything is okay when literally it's not, they feel that. And so it makes that causes anxiety, right?
Not only
So
do they feel that, but then they learn to mask themselves.
yes, and that's where you get the anxiety disorders, and that's where you get all these things that these mental health, bigger mental health issues. So when you're honest and you tell them, then they know I'm not crazy. My dad was upset about something. I wasn't just feeling, right? So it helps them really get clarity on their mind that everything is okay. Like he's having a bad day. That's part of the reason he got mad at me or whatever it was, right? So you're helping them see that they're right in their intuition, because if we all could lead more with our intuition, I think people would have less anxiety. They would be less angry or have less mental health things going on because of that. I think we mask a lot as parents and as people because they want everything to be okay and living from that positivity, and there's great parts of that, but kids they know when it's not. They know when it's not great. So yes, I agree with you.
Maybe that's a part of the reason why I find it so easy is because that I know it would have helped me when I was
Yeah.
younger. Because when I was growing up, my mom hid everything from me. If it
Mhm.
was negative or was going to ruin my day, it was hid from me. My mom hid health issues from me. We were poor, like really poor. I didn't know we were poor. I just thought everybody lived that way.
Yeah.
Um, and the older I got, they kept doing it. They kept, like shading me from the negative things. And like, I was probably, gosh, my grandparents did the same thing. My
Mm.
grandparents had health issues and stuff like that. They didn't want to worry anyone. Well,
Yeah.
you know, now grandpa's dead and it caught everybody by surprise. So,
Right, right, right.
it's 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 strange that how we overcompensate for things. When we grow up one way, we don't want to see these things, with our kids, so we do things differently. And with the millennial generation, it's interesting to watch the positive parenting or I don't even know what to call it, the positive reinforcement all the time, like constantly, uh the
Well,
so
gentle parenting is a big
gentle
word.
parenting, there we go, gentle parenting in the millennial generation. I think it's weird. It would never work out for me. I'm not a
That's
gentle
okay.
parent.
Yeah. And that's okay, right? And I think that's really cool that you're able to like say that. And I think that's one thing that's important to know is that every family is so different, and whatever works for one family might not work for another family. And I do think
I
the millennials, one thing that's interesting about them is that they are more aware, kind of the conversation we're having right now about like generational stuff or how our parents did it. I think with me, I'm generation, I guess it's X, right? Generation X. Um, we kind of grew up in that where everybody's hiding stuff and not telling the truth, everything is okay. To these millennials aren't doing that as much. They want to be more just do it different than the way our parents did it, which I think is cool. But I do also know that the gentle parenting is very big, and I think it can go either way. I think there's a balance with gentle parenting because it can work, but there also has to be boundaries, structure, consistency put in place. And if you don't have those things in place, it is not going to work.
And it also kind of depends on the kid too. I mean, if we're being honest, some kids are assholes, you know, and it really, if you've got an asshole kid, sometimes gentle parenting just isn't going to work. And I think if you have one of those asshole children, I think you're probably the reason why they're an asshole child. But take pride in that. Like they are your asshole child. Own it. I do. And so I'm stuck right there in the middle. I am zillennial, I guess is what they would call it. I'm right I was born in 1985, so I'm
Okay.
turned 40 in 2 weeks,
Okay.
and so I've got the best of both worlds. I've got a lot of good Gen X qualities and a lot of good millennial qualities,
Yeah.
but I've got bad from both as well.
Yeah.
And the way I kind of see things is gentle parenting is for parents, or I think it's for parents who are that have a different are able to be gentle and have a gentle spirit and gentle nature, and their kids are not misbehaving on purpose,
Mhm.
like trying to uh, be assholes just for the sake of assholes. I think gentle parenting kind of lends to that as well. I think that boundaries, when you said boundaries, what I was thinking of was, you know, by the third time we have to be nice, so maybe the fourth time is not so nice.
hmm hmm Yeah. And I think that goes to like when you're saying that gentle, more of that soft spoken parent. And that's why every family is so different. And it's so important to know like what works for you, what's going to be your model. And there's no right or wrong as long as you're healthy in your family and you feel good about it and you feel good about how your kids are being raised. So I think that just having that clarity of like what your values are, what you want your kids to grow up like is very important.
And I think also um, that I don't think the generational issues between boomer, Gen X, and millennial, I think they're a little bit exacerbated by the fact that we always take on those parental qualities that we say we don't like about our parents, but
Hmm
then, when something negative happens, we hit that default setting and then our parents come out of our mouth.
Yeah.
And um, I've heard so many times, things that my mom used to say to me. I've heard them come
Yeah.
out of my mouth so many times, and I'm like, hey, mom was right. I'm gonna end up, with kids just like me. She put the mother curse on me. But yeah, I absolutely believe that I think it's thoughtful parenting
Mhm.
more than anything. I think we are as a generation, and Generation X is also into this, but more thoughtful
Mhm.
in our
Yeah.
parenting,
Yeah.
and we care a little bit. There didn't used to be so much emphasis on um, how kids were raised would affect them in adulthood. There didn't used to be so much emphasis on that. And then in the 80s and 90s, we grew up kind of understanding that parents are just doing the best that they can sometimes,
Yeah.
and that there's no rule book, there's no parenting guide that each of us are given, and it's one of those things you kind of take a day at a time. And I've got 23 years now of parenting experience, and I can honestly say that thoughtfulness and being thoughtful while you're parenting is probably the best thing that you could do for your kids. And being thoughtful about what you say, how those things affect them, especially when they're older. And I worry about that all the time. I worry about my kids liking me, and that's a very strange thing for a parent to say, because ultimately at the end of the day, I don't really care if they like
Mhm.
me. I just want them to be good, productive citizens when I'm
Mhm.
gone. And
Yeah.
ultimately, my job as a parent is to make sure that my kids can survive without me. And I don't know of a lot of people that think of things like that. And the reason why I think that way is because about 10 years ago, my mom passed away. I wasn't ready for it. And nobody prepared me for that. Nobody prepared me for what that was going to feel like. She certainly didn't prepare me for it. She was 56. She was really young.
I was young.
And at that time I was like, man, I don't know how to live without my mom.
Mm,
I was still getting gas money from her, So I was like, wow, what am I going to do here? And so um, I adopted this way of parenting as like, hey, I've got to teach you how to live without me. So we need to get basic survival skills out of the way first, how to do your laundry, how to wash dishes, how to bathe yourself. And then we'll work on how to cook, how to clean, and
good.
how to manage your finances and stuff like that. And as long as you got the basics covered, I don't give a shit what you do otherwise. And I think my kids love that about me, is as long as they are on the right track, they never hear from dad, in a negative way. Like
Yeah.
they always hear from me. I'm always here, but as
Yeah.
long as they're on the right path and doing the things that they need to do, they don't there's never any resistance from me.
That's really nice. I like that. That's really nice. And it's nice. I think when you say thoughtful too, that goes to the whole like just being very conscious daily and being very like present in your thinking of how you're interacting with your children, which I think is wonderful.
And it's kind of weird because we're all on our phones all the time, right?
You have to be so careful. Yes.
I'm on my phone way too much. I think the last time I looked, it was like 8 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I use my phone a lot for work. I'm
Mhm.
doing this stuff, and there's a certain point where sometimes my kids will have to remind me, hey, I'm in the same room, like put the phone down.
Yeah.
And I think that's funny because like they never put theirs down. So
I know.
yeah.
I know all of us are so guilty of that. That is for sure.
I know you said something. I remember you say something about that was interesting about the devices and having screen times. Um, I do think screen time is causing an issue with children, and it's because of a lack of management.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
And
that setting. Yeah.
I think, well, I also think so. They're doing it in public schools, right?
Mhm.
When I drop
Yeah.
my kid off at school, he's got a laptop,
Yep.
and that's how they do their learning on the laptop. They don't talk to each other. They don't,
Hmm.
when they're doing group projects, the group projects are on the computer.
Yeah. It's all in there. Yes. Yeah.
And in my experience, that's limiting communication between them. That's causing communication issues between the older generations and the younger generations, because the younger generations don't know how to talk. They're all talking through their devices, and they can all be in the same room, not talk. They're all talking to each other, but they're on devices. So I, it was really interesting to run into that video. I believe it was like a short video, and you said that management with these devices is very important. And I forget the words you used. I'm paraphrasing here,
Hmm.
but what do you suggest with the boundaries on how long do you think that children should have screen time in one day?
So it all depends on the age of the child. So, for example, like children under 3 really shouldn't have any, right? And so we all, many people do it, but like research is now showing they shouldn't really have anything. And then as kids get older, their age depends on how long they should have it, right? So as they 3 to 5, you might give them an hour or less, right? And as they keep getting older, it all depends on what my whole thing is like keep it away as long as possible because as they get older, it's so much harder to manage, like you're saying, because they have the computers at school, they have the gaming with their friends. So really keeping it out of your family as long as possible, and then just having the whatever you decide as a family of how long it's going to be, that you stick to that and you're consistent with that limit. And your children will listen to you, especially if you start it younger. They'll respect that. But you have to be consistent. You can't forget about it. If you say 2 hours, it's 2 hours, and you make sure that they are off of it. And then you take the devices if you have to. Like right now, we're in a stage where I'm taking all the devices in my room at night. And I trust my child, but it's so hard because it dings and it beeps and they wake up to that. And so it's not like I think he's going to get on there. It's more just like I'm protecting his sleep. I'm taking away the temptation that's hard for even me if I hear my phone ding next to my bed, and his brain isn't even developed yet completely. So I really just try to, I'm always paying attention to that and just being very thoughtful and aware of when those devices are in the hands of your children, putting the limits on what they're able to even watch or see or download. Apple's great about giving you all those parental controls. And so making sure you're activating all of that stuff is really, I mean, it's hard. It's not easy. And the kids are really good about getting around all of it.
Oh yeah,
But really,
they are. That's the biggest problem that we have is I'm
yeah.
not smart enough for parental control sometimes.
It is so hard. And so just being aware and being open with your kids and like having the conversation, that communication about it, and them knowing that they can talk to you about whatever it is with technology, whether it's downloading a game or a game they want to play, just that you're not just always saying no or you're always saying yes, that there's like communication and there's reason behind it.
So whereabouts are you located?
I am in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
So I'm near Kansas City, about an hour north of Kansas City. So we
Okay.
have winter time here, and I think it's a lot easier to manage device time in the summer,
Hmm.
in the warmer months because we're able to go outside, we're able to hang out with each other, and in the wintertime it's just kind of
It is,
free.
it's hard.
It's a free for all around here. Is kind of what it. I best describe it as. It didn't used to be this way until so my youngest child, his 5, he'll be 6 in May, and it's a weird having a child that young when you're this damn old. It's, I get confused for grandpa all the time, and I'm like, come on now, I'm not that old. And but now I am. I do have a grandbaby now, so and he just turned a year old. So for me, I think that it's easier to manage the children in warmer weather. And I think in the wintertime, we're always, so we got like a 980 square feet house here. So it's a fairly small house for the United States. And we're cramped up, we're cooped up, and we're at each other, during the wintertime. So I think it's sometimes easier just to say, hey, take your tablet, take your phone, and get out of here. I think it's sometimes easier to do that. And I think us as parents being thoughtful, I think we need to be more present with our kids and off our devices and they get
Hmm.
off their devices. And I think if we spent more time, I think if we spent more time trying to build that relationship face to face and then take our kids out and do things face to face interactions with other people without electronics, that'll also help.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I think TV is actually on its way out. I don't think a TV being in every room of the house won't be a thing in 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
I think there are less people with television. There's more people now that don't have televisions than there was in the 90s. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal. I think that's going to help out quite a bit.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought. Yeah, you're probably right.
So, what are some things that you do with your family, like for fun? Like when, during the work week, I'm assuming that you have probably a little bit of time with your kids during the week, but what are some things that you guys do together when um, when the weather's bad, or when you do have to keep those rules of 1 to 2 hours of screen time a day? What are some things that you do to keep your family engaged?
It's not easy, especially as they get older. We'll do movies, we'll do games together, we'll try to go outside if we can. Um, we do Legos sometimes. We'll do like the big Lego things. We've done that, but it's really trying to be very creative. Sleepovers, we'll do sleepovers with kids, have family, like have other kids come over, and then during that time, I'll try to take away the electronics for a bit and let them do games together. So really being creative, thinking very proactively and being very present about it. And so like if it's Saturday and I know it's going to rain, and it's winter, I'll be thinking already like Wednesday or Thursday, all right, what are we going to do? So we're not on the devices all day. And so it just depends on each weekend what what we'll end up doing. But it's really just being very present, focused, and thinking about it and just not, oh, it's Saturday, it's raining, I don't have anything to do. So really just, and you don't have to do things that are expensive. I mean, even if it's just going to the grocery store or to the park, just taking the kids even with you, instead of leaving them there.
I think that is very, very important, is to take them with you. Whatever, like, whenever you're doing something like you're running errands, I think it's actually important for kids to see you doing that.
Yeah.
If you're going to the store, all kids are going to need to know how to shop. They're going to need to
Mhm.
know how to pay. They're going to need to know how to talk to people and where to buy things, and they're going to need to know all that stuff. When you license your vehicle, that's another good one. I ran into the situation. My 20-year-old didn't know how to license his vehicle, and
Hmm.
you know,
Oh yeah.
I'm like, hey, you've watched me do this plenty of times. Like, have I never showed you? And he's like, no, not really. You never really explained it. I just watched it. And I was like, okay, well, this is what we do. And I went step by step through the process, and he can now go do it by himself, because luckily we live in a small enough area that,
Yeah.
I can I can say things from here, from the house, and okay, I know where that's at. I know where that's at. And luckily now everything can be done online. So I just showed him that way too. But I ran into that issue. I think so. I think that is very important when you're doing things to do them with your kids. And unfortunately for us, we didn't have much of an option because we didn't have a village until recently.
Hmm.
And when I hear a lot. I hear parents say, "Oh, I need a break from my kids, and I need to go out. I need to go to the bar." And I don't understand that way of thinking.
Hmm.
Because my kids' entire lives, if they couldn't go, I didn't go,
Hmm. Yeah.
and
And I think
that's
that
the
goes
way
back to this. Yeah.
that's just the way I feel about things. Is I'm a parent now, and how would my kids feel if they couldn't be in that spot there, like in with me, and of course we all deserve date nights and stuff like that. My wife and I, we've been together for 19 years now and have never went on a vacation alone.
Oh
And
wow.
I mean, that sucks. It's really terrible. We wish we could change that, but at the same time, we don't have a village.
Yeah.
I do have people that I can drop the kids off with for a few days. And when I say I don't really have a village, like I'm gonna have phone calls at the wazoo now for saying that. But like my brother will call and he'll say, "You have me," and my sister will call, "You have me," and I'm like, "Well, you guys don't really understand. It's not that I can't drop them off with you. It's their comfort level, my comfort level. Everybody's, everybody has to be taken into account here. What kind of treatment are they going to receive if they're there for a week and piss you off? Um,
Right.
what kind of treatment are you going to receive if you make them upset? And I worry about those things. And then while I'm gone, I end up not having a good time. So
Yeah. So,
that's very important to me, is if you got something to do, like errands. It's very important for your kids to learn how to do that, learn how to do it from you, so that later on in life, you're not like having to call them and make sure that, did you license your vehicle? Do you have insurance? Do you have you eaten this week? So you don't have to ask those questions. You don't have to worry about it. Teach them when they're young.
Exactly. I agree.
So
I agree.
what are some things that you what are some things that you taught your kids that have that ordinarily people don't teach their kids, that you see it as an advantage for them over their neighbors?
Well, being a therapist, one of the big I've been very into feelings and being like very into feeling words and always talking about our feelings and um really communicating in a way that is different probably than a lot of families. And I don't know if it's an advantage, it's just different. And I think that it's helped my son specifically just learn how to talk about things in a different way. I don't know if it's better or worse, but just he's able to really express himself pretty well and share how he's feeling. And I think that's because I was a therapist and I was able to teach him when he was really young. I'm very aware of all of that. So
So do you have a
yeah,
two-parent household?
we do. My husband,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, like, the communication, and feelings and talking about your feelings, that's absolutely going to help with your boy.
Yeah.
And I say that from experience, because a lot of men my age don't know how to talk about their feelings because we were told to suppress them,
Yes.
and that we don't have feelings. And I absolutely have feelings. I have no problems letting, as long as I can communicate them effectively. I don't
Hmm.
have I don't have a problem sharing with my feelings with anyone.
Hmm.
So, um, but I was just curious if you were a two-parent household, because um, basically it's important for communication issues to be resolved with both parents in mind, and boys having that relationship with their dad is very important, and getting that feedback from dad as well. Like, it's okay to share those feelings. It's okay to tell people how you feel, especially if you're mad, sad, especially if your feelings are going to affect that person.
Yeah, for sure. We have my husband and I talk about that kind of stuff all the time. And when I'm working with families, I make sure to share with them that specifically and that they do, if you're in a two-parent household, you have to be communicating with the other parent about how you're going to talk about things or communicate with each other. It helps the kids when you're both on the same page. That is for sure.
And do you think it's important? I'll make this a last question, because I think this is a good place to wrap up this conversation. Do you think it's important for mom and dad to show affection in front of their children?
Yeah, if it's authentic, for sure. Like if it's authentic between the two of you and both of you are that type of person where you're like fine with it, yeah, of course. I think it's great. I think if being authentic to who you are and who your partner is, I think it is fine. Yeah.
The reason why I ask
Yeah.
is because my wife thinks it's sometimes weird
Okay.
to, like, um, show affection in front of the children sometimes, and I'm like, hey, that's how they learn.
Yeah.
That's how they learn to show affection to their loved ones. And I'm not talking like, I don't want to just make out in the middle of the kitchen, in front of the kids. That's not what I'm talking about. But walking through the store, holding hands, or
Love it.
like playful back rubs, or a peck on the cheek or a kiss on the lips. It doesn't have to be graphic or anything. Just showing affection in front of the children, I think, is a very important thing to not forget about, because that
Yeah.
is absolutely how they learn to show affection for their loved ones. And absolutely, I think, as if you're an affectionate type person, I think it is very important to shower your kids with affection as well.
Mhm.
And Any chance that you get, tell them you love them.
Yes.
Like I tell my kids multiple times, I'm sure they get tired of hearing it sometimes. I love you.
Yeah.
Anytime that we're on the phone, um, and I always make it a big deal to end every conversation with "I love you." And I was asked once why I do that, and I said, "Well, it's for me. I don't know if I'm going to talk to that person again, so I want them to know. And when they
Yeah.
leave the house, I love you,
Yeah.
and it's very important for me to say that and for them to feel loved. And I think that's a big deal.
I think that's amazing. And I know you had said at the beginning at some point about how people ask you about raising kids or whatever. And I think it's because all the things you're saying, you're present with them, you let them know how you feel, you're communicating with them, you are affectionate, all of the things. And I think you model exactly what a child needs, right? And so I think that's wonderful.
I try. And the thing behind me, Coffee with Bearded Bad Dad, that's the name of the podcast. And the reason why is because like there's many reasons for the name, but the biggest reason is because I always thought I was a bad parent
Oh,
because I was being told that by ex-wife. And I've got three baby mamas. The two baby mamas that I'm no longer with, um, they had told me, things to hurt me. And they
mm,
knew that, that was going to cut deep because, I didn't have an active father in my life. And so it's very important to me that the kids just know that I love them and
yeah.
that I'm here for them and communicating that. And so with that, I think that's a great place to leave this conversation. And I'd love to talk to you again if you got anything going on in the future or anything like that, or if you got any other projects you're working on. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm on Instagram, which it's Anastasia.aruz in an Instagram. And then you can always look me up on my website. It's anastasiaaruz.com. And yeah, I'm very present in both of those places.
Are you on YouTube or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube as well. Yeah, it's
Okay.
under, I think, Anastasia Aruz again. So yeah, I'm pretty much on all of the platforms with just my name. So yeah.
Awesome, Anastasia. It's been great. And I'd love to talk to you again in the future if you're up for it. And for now, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks
Bye.
for having me. Bye.